perspective, in terms of producers, the scale of what we buy probably exceeds all the restaurants put in a city together. And this is what we're going to be talking about. How will this industry evolve? What are some of the challenges that we will face moving ahead? How does this benchmark with what's happening in the rest of the world? And what does it mean to service this sector? Because, for example, today, between the top 3 or 4 players within India, they together produce more than 10 lakh meals every single day. Now, just imagine the scale of what we are talking. So we are a smaller company. We are the 3rd largest in India. We produce about 1.8 lakh meals every day. And this is for corporates, it's for educational institutions, it's for plants, and the price points can vary from 150 rupees to 650 rupees per day, per meal. So this is giving you some context of what was not so relevant 3 years ago and what it is like now. What I'll now do is I'll request my colleagues to give you a perspective of their own businesses and how do they see the evolution of this industry, after which we will attempt to address some of the points that Ritu has put through in the note that she sent, or what would be of interest to you. I hope this kind of gives you some broad perspective of what we are trying to attempt, hopefully sufficient to keep you awake. And please feel free, like I said earlier, to stop us when you're getting very sleepy. So, Ambika?
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce myself and the company before I start. I run a company called Kara, out of which catering is one of our few verticals that we do. We also run cafes, produce gourmet products, have a cookery school where we host different sorts of classes. But we actually started off as a catering company, and that is one of the biggest verticals that we run today. It's interesting because I think all 3 of us are seeing catering from a different light. I consider Kara to be a niche catering company where we work with personal clients, with top luxury brands, with a lot of embassies. So I see it from another light, and I think as we evolve in the discussion, what is a very important point that I'd like to talk about is the relevance of healthy food, healthy menus, and also the source of your ingredient, the importance of chemical-free produce and farming, and questioning where that comes from and how you communicate that on your catering menus. But we'll evolve that as and when we speak in the panel today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samir Lamba. I've been born in a catering family. I'm actually 3rd generation. And we do all kinds of caterings besides running restaurants. We do corporate as well as wedding, as well as sports catering. We do large events like the Formula One, the IPL, and we're more focused today on exhibitions, conventions. That is our focus period. Since I know catering, since I was born, it's changed a lot. From wider menus, the health aspects, to the technology in the catering side, to the menus, everything has evolved from the start when I started my career in catering to serving 8 dishes with the standard menu, which we used to serve everywhere. Today we have world cuisines, we fly in chefs from abroad. The ingredients itself has changed so much. I was discussing yesterday, I remember there was no mushroom in India earlier when I started catering. Today, mushroom is just a staple and evolving to much, much more fancier and exotic fruits and vegetables, giving a new perspective. Even chefs have become so adventurous now. I remember serving cold soup at a function in Karnal way back, and the kind of complaints I got that if you can't even serve a hot soup, what are you catering about? And so much has evolved. Today, if we cater even in a small city anywhere in India, everybody's so aware. And this change has come across through the internet, to the television. It's just evolved so much. There's so much change. Yeah.
Thanks, Ambika, for that interesting introduction, and Sameer, to you as well on how your take of catering has been. Maybe I'll just give a short outline of Elior, because most of you wouldn't have heard and will be wondering what it is about. So it's a food service company based out of France. So those of you who are restaurateurs, you would have heard of Alain Ducasse. We're the largest shareholder or the equity holder in Alain Ducasse restaurants. So next time you're in Paris, please do visit one of his restaurants. And in line with what Ambika said, there are no meats in Alain Ducasse restaurants anymore. Unfortunately, I don't think in the next 15 or 20 years, India is going to have a Michelin star because of supply chain issues. I think there will be a session on supply chain. But yes, as far as food presentation is concerned, menu development is concerned, those are definitely changing. So Elior entered India last year. We did 2 acquisitions which were simultaneously timed of Megabyte and CRCL, which got us about 3,800 employees. And we do about 180,000 meals every day. But what's more important and interesting from a category perspective is what Sameer alluded to, which is how much it has changed. So for example, one of my customers today, where we get paid 650 rupees per meal per employee, he actually has the chef from USA plan the menu with us every month. Not only does the menu get planned, they even audit the produce that we buy by going to the farm from where we procure them. Now, this is something even 24 months ago would have completely been unimaginable, that the food program at a corporate has such a high level of organizational participation in it. We have another customer called Google. I mean, you'll be shocked. Google even buys the rice and dal which we cook. So things are changing so dramatically with workplace food, because for most of us, it ends up being the one proper meal we have in that 5-day week. And therefore the attention, which is what Sameer talked about, to planning the menu, to managing the health concerns around it, which is what Ambika talked about, and structuring the offer in such a way that there isn't fatigue that builds into it. Because, when you're having food at the workplace every day, fatigue is the single biggest concern on your mind, that, it's the same food every day, how can it be different? And that's where, the challenge comes in from a consumption standpoint. And from a delivery perspective, which is where some of you might be interested, and which is where I found the biggest challenge. So to do 1.8 lakh meals at price points from 150 to 650, how do you manage your recipes for different price points? So we actually had to, customize a menu management software so that for the same paneer pasanda, I have 3 different recipes depending on the price point. And then link that menu management software to your ERP so that you can cost it out in the right way. Not just build the recipe, but cost it so that you can manage your margins. And then it gets more complex than that when you compare it with restaurants, because you produce according to consumption forecasts that you use technology and tools to design. What you don't consume in that 1 hour is waste. So unlike a restaurant where you produce to order, here you produce on forecasting tools, which is a very, very, not a very sophisticated tool yet. We are linking it to POS to get consumption data and so on. But what it then tells you is that managing this whole offer is more about technology, creativity at the kitchen, and empowering the chef to tweak based on consumption feedback. And that's why what Sameer said, I feel, is just hit the nail on the head, that it has changed not only within the last 2 decades, it has changed in the last 2 to 3 years. Things which we never thought could happen are happening now. And the biggest one, which many of you might be aware, which hits us the most, till last year we always thought a food producer was a competitor. So he's a competitor and she could have been a competitor. Just 2 months ago, the 4th largest food service provider in India does not have a kitchen. And they do 160,000 meals a day approximately. It's Hunger Box for those of you who know. So we were talking earlier about how technology is going to make a difference. This is how it is already making a difference. That without a kitchen, without a production facility, you are already the Uber of the food business. So it's really exciting times that we are in. The market is evolving in no different a manner that it has in other parts of the world. It's growing, the estimated CAGR is about 16%. And therefore, we are in for very interesting times with expertise from people like Ambika and Samir, which will drive the future changes in the industry. And I'll welcome, Ambika to share some of the trends she sees coming in this space and, walk us through some of that. And then we can, talk around that. Yep.
So in terms of emerging trends in the catering business, I'd like to focus on a few and relevant to also my business. I came back and started Kara 5 years ago. I actually came back and I was farming chemical-free produce, as I had mentioned before. And when we started the catering venture, we used to go to our clients and say, we're giving you the most beautiful, farm-fresh, wonderful produce on your menus. And the price has to justify the fact that we're using organic produce and these amazing ingredients. And just 5 years ago, it really, really took us a lot for them to understand how important this was. It was very easily overlooked. They were like, it's okay, I don't care if it's coming from the farm. I just, give me a regular menu. Today, it's done a 360-degree turn. Our clients are so aware about, the source of the produce. They love the fact that literally the vegetables or the salad leaves are picked that morning and brought to their homes to cook in the evening for their event. And taking this a step further, and something that, again, we do pride ourselves in, is in today's environment, intolerances, allergies to food, it's not something additional that we're catering to. It's something that we have to do in terms of a regular SOP in our business. We have families that are all vegan out of choice who come to us only for a vegan menu that we have to cater to. So on and so forth. There's so many different allergies that are coming up and intolerances that are coming up that it's really, really important that we have to make sure that we adhere to that and we're able to give our customers that service. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was also the style of service that is changing. And I refer to this as called the flying buffet. So often you go to weddings or parties and you see very, very elaborate buffets, with 10 different types of cuisines that people are offering. And something that we have started doing is that instead of keeping food lying, in chafing dishes, for multiple amounts of hours, we coined something called the flying buffet, where we sort of take that out and freshly churn the food that rotates from the beginning till, 4 o'clock in the morning if we have to, but it's constantly passed around. And they're bigger bites in bowls. But it's been quite incredible to see how this concept has replaced the concept of having a traditional buffet. What's also interesting in this is the aspect of the fact that because you're serving all of this, your service staff needs to be really knowledgeable. And I think gone are the days where you can have someone just pass a canopy, under you and have no idea what they're serving. You got to make sure that your service staff are extremely well trained. They know exactly what ingredients went into it. God forbid someone has an allergy of a nut. They should be able to say, yes, ma'am, there's a nut in this canopy, please don't eat it. So going hand in hand with the flying buffet concept, also one of the trends that we are trying to keep up with is the fact that we need to have a pool of really, really well-educated service staff to make sure that this entire experience goes hand in hand. And then taking this one step further in terms of what we've been noticing and the kind of requests that we've been getting is also no longer, in terms of this whole buffet concept, is to remove that and do more live stations, to do more interactive sessions. People are knowledgeable. They know about their food. They're adventurous to try different things. They want to talk to the chefs. They want to interact with the chefs. So instead of just, sort of placing things and not having any interaction, this is being replaced by live stations and more interactive forms of dining. And this is all happening just within the outdoor catering realm. So imagine with restaurants and cafes, the trends are going, so much more further. So that is just a couple of things that I have noticed as and when, we've been growing the business. I'll pass it on to you to take this further.
One change which I've seen over the years was earlier when we used to cook food at caterings, we used to cook Indian food primarily, and at such high heats that we used to kill everything in it. Whatever allergens, whatever germs, whatever it is, it was all good to go, and that used to take care part of a lot of the hygiene part. Going forward today, where we're serving cold food, we're serving different cuisines, so hygiene has become a big factor on how you handle food. You have to train your people on how to handle the food, to wash their hands continuously, even basic hygiene standards. Across India, still in so many stadiums, in so many places we've catered, kitchen is the last on anybody's mind. It's so unfortunate. They just feel that the caterer will come and cater from anywhere. He'll cater from thin air, he'll cater without any basic infrastructure. And this has been carrying on, and this is outdoor catering's biggest bane. Even if you're catering at somebody's house, they'll put the kitchen somewhere which is inaccessible, and you'll be struggling. It's on nobody's mind that how it'll come out and how hygiene should be handled. And in the past few years, yes, trends have changed. We put up base kitchens. You've got refrigerated vans coming in. You've got food handling. A lot has changed, but a lot has to change from the side of the corporates and the stadium and the architects and the design people, that kitchen is required. It is a requirement, and it has to be properly planned. If a building has 100,000 employees, there has to be some place where they can be fed properly, and the kitchen should be of that standard also. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any change yet on this, but maybe going further, this is one point which will come up. Second thing is technology. It is coming inside the kitchen, but at a very, very slow pace. We are still using decades old cooking methods, and to teach the chefs which we have who have been with us for generations or have been cooking in a certain way is very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. In fact, it's easier to take a raw person and train him to cook in a new method than train an old guy. We've over the years now tried to standardize our food and have started processing different items at different stages of time and started preserving them, whether in a cold chain, whether freezing them, or whether retorting them. This has helped, but there is so much resistance from the manpower who feel that they can make a better dish. My take always has been that a chef has no magic in his hands. He's taking a certain set of ingredients, cooking at a certain temperature, and a certain product is coming out. If he can do it, we can duplicate it. For example, recently we did a kulcha in a pizza oven, and we've done it well. And we've cooked butter chicken in a rational machine, in a combi oven, and we've done it well. And they used to come and tell me that the coal flavor will not be there. So we put a piece of coal inside. They said, if for biryani you need a copper thing. So we made a copper vessel and put it in the rational machine. Everything is possible. It's just that we are so bound by the four walls. We think so much inside the box that nobody is willing to change. And there is so much wastage in the traditional methods of cooking. There is so much wastage which can be conserved. If you cook in an oven and you heat it up, it's taking that energy at one point of time. And you can keep cooking because the heat has reached a certain temperature. But if you're cooking on open gas, you're wasting so much energy. But let's see, it's all evolving. Yeah.
Thank you, Samir. It's really interesting what you mentioned around the kitchen. So I was not from this industry. And when I went to the board of Elior, which is headquartered in France, and made a pitch to them to enter the food services business, there were 11 people on that board. And I told them India is a great market. I showed a McKinsey study which said it's $6 billion, is growing at 17%. They were quite impressed. Then somebody said, so how far is it? And I showed them the map, and I said, it's 10.5 hours away. And they said, oh, that's even further than the US. So for them, US was the benchmark, and how are you going to be doing food in a country which is so far remote? And what kind of safety standards would exist in the kitchen? So at that time, I was working in a technology company, and I thought it was a very simple business. Somehow I convinced the board. I said, okay, fine, I'll put stake into this. Believe you me, this is a great business. And after getting into the business and completing the 2 acquisitions, I realized how stupid I had been in assuming that this is rather simple, because I'd never managed a business which had perishability in consumption and perishability in raw material management, which means you manage inventory with 7 days window and you manage what you produce with a 1 hour window. That was one side of the story. So we do these 2 acquisitions and we look at the compliance matrix, talking about kitchens. We run restaurants, which means, areas where you consume food, or cafeterias as we call them in India. So we had 76 points at which we were either cooking the food on site or bringing it from our central kitchens. These 76 sites required 373 licenses. Okay? So you can be sure that we have the perfect recipe to ensure we have the worst food safety standards in the world. Because the moment you're going to have 373 licenses to cook and serve food in 76 places, you know that compliance is never going to be of the kind that will ensure food is actually safe. So today, in my central kitchen, even though we have all these certifications, HCAP, FSSAI, blah, blah, you name it, every week I have at least 2 client visits to the kitchen to independently audit. All our customer contracts even specify the number of times we have been allowed for foreign bodies to be found in the food. So the good news is, yes, you can get 650 rupees per meal at a corporate. The bad news is your supply chain is not geared to provide you the ingredients that you need to meet some of those requirements. Be it foreign body contamination, like in the case of chicken. We have it in our contract that we cannot procure chicken which is not certified and tested to be safe. So I had personally gone to Lifeline, which is where we buy our chicken from, to see and validate that there is no antibiotics and unfair breeding that is taking place there, which hurts the health of our consumers. So from a certification and standpoint, from a compliance standpoint, it is simply mind-boggling when you have to go through the licensing requirements. Yesterday you heard Anjan mention about 31 licenses because he was talking about maybe one city, few restaurants. But if you have to be, on site across cities, the compliance matrix. So there is a firm that has emerged. It's a TVS Group company which has tens of hundreds of employees and 100 crore plus revenue just to guide you on compliance. So, it just shows that we don't know whether we are in the food services business or in the compliance business. Okay? So as an industry, one of the reasons today, the outsourcing ratio, which means how much are corporates or different segments, you have education, you have corporates, you have healthcare, willing to source out the food production activity to professional food service firms. And that ratio for India is one of the lowest because of all of these bottlenecks that currently exist in the industry. For example, globally, railways is a big segment for food servicing. But I don't think in our lifetimes anybody would see the government, not producing food in its kitchen. Similarly, it is, there is defense, there is universities, in the US, one of the biggest segments is, prisons, which we call corrections. So gradually India will get there, but, these challenges remain. But kitchens are becoming more modern. You have, I don't know if any of you who live here have ever been to a Samsung plant or one of these plants. You will be amazed to see the chapatis, the way they are made. It's fully robotized, and there is no way you can make out this was made by a machine. It's like perfect to the core. So trends are changing, kitchens are changing across sectors. Companies are becoming more aware. They are willing to invest both on equipment in case you are producing it on site, as well as in compensating you if you're producing it at your central kitchen. Some of my customer contracts even specify the temperature drop between the point of dispatch, which is the central kitchen, and the receipt on site at the employee, where the employee consumes the food. And therefore, you have to time your logistics. We own our own delivery vehicles to ensure that we are within that allowable temperature drop, unless there's a finishing kitchen. If there's a finishing kitchen, it's a little easier because, there is scope to reheat, but then there are some issues around that as well. So what you definitely will see is that India will continue to emerge in no different a way than it has in other sectors of the economy. So there was a time there was only a Maruti and an Ambassador and a Fiat, and today you have a very difficult task to choose a car. The same evolution will happen in the food services business. Yes, there have been foreign companies which have entered and exited, but there are foreign companies which have stayed the course. We believe and we think we will also do that. And therefore, the industry is going to see a lot of changes around all elements of the chain, be it on the supply side, be it on the technology side, be it on the health side, and across different segments that I talked about. And some of these changes, maybe, Ambika, you could also talk about and highlight better, because being from a food background, you know this better than me, I'm sure.
I actually just want to, going forward with what you just said, I'm not going to get into too much detail in the whole license compliance thing, but I think because we're dealing with food and it's so critical that every company, yes, we have 1,000 licenses that we have to get, and we just get caught up getting those licenses, and you have all these compliances, but internally you have to have your eye on the ball as far as food hygiene and safety is concerned. There is no compromise as far as that area is concerned. And talking about that, I think back in the day when we were talking about kitchens, who thought about, where catering kitchens operated out of, where were they located, how were they built, what kind of equipment they were working with. When I built my first base kitchen, I built it with the idea that I wanted my clients to come to my kitchen, to do tastings inside my kitchen, for them to actually observe and see the level of standards of hygiene and safety that we follow and experience it there. I think even just 5 years ago, it was unheard of that someone was opening their doors up for a client to come into their kitchen and see what's happening. I think that very much is changing. And what's really exciting, actually, in terms of another trend is, in the day, our kitchen works as a regular industrial-based kitchen. At night, it turns into a chef's table. And we can have people come and dine, actually experience what it's like dining inside a proper, fully functional base kitchen, where the chefs around you are bustling and cooking, and you're experiencing all of that, and you have a 5 to 7 course meal. So it's just another extension of the kind of different things that are happening. And honestly, with what you said, in terms of all the changes and the growth in the catering and food space, there should be no reason why Delhi is not the food capital of India. That is something that we should all be aspiring to do in terms of the innovations happening in restaurants, but also in terms of what's happening in outdoor catering. Yeah, I think I can wrap up with that there.
The evolvement of the kitchen and hygiene standards has to start actually from training. Till today, what we do is we hire people and put them on the floor straight off. What I've learned in the recent years working with American brands is that training is a huge component. Now, actually, we hire people and put them through a 3-month rigorous training program. We've set up this center with the government's help in Chandigarh, which is my hometown, and we get people there and then train them. It has to start from there. If they don't understand how it is important and why it is important, it's never going to be built in the DNA. So it helps when we put these people through the steps there. And with our American partners, we have a lot of material available. Going forward, I believe this is going to be crucial, and more restaurateurs and more hoteliers are going to do this. In fact, in the hotels with Oberoi's and the Taj, they already do this. But I've never seen an Indian restaurant actually do it. It's actually like just 15 days on the ground and you're up running. But here we hire people 3 months before. This is another crucial part of it, and it helps in handling food, the standards, the HACCP standards, everything. It just gets there. Yeah.
Thanks. We talked about kitchen, which is on the production side. There's one insight I thought which I could share with you, which is on the consumption side. So we have a different mix of clients, right, at different price points. And the model for delivering food can be different. So for example, you could be running a food court where you pre-agree the menu pricing. And then the employee comes to the food court, he swipes his card, and then he picks the dishes he wants. So we call that the cash and carry model. There's a second one where the company or the employer pays for the entire meal. So employee does nothing apart from register for that meal. So we say that's the company paid model. And then the third one, which is the managed services, which means like, for example, a Google. They buy the ingredients, you convert it at the kitchen on their premise. What is interesting from this is how consumption per employee varies based on the business model. And this for me was a revelation, because you would think people consume food either by their educational background or by their social background or based on their food preferences. But between Google and Cisco is only 3 kilometers apart, because I hope this is not on the press so I can talk about it. They're 3 kilometers apart in terms of their offices, okay? They have two different business models. One of them, the employee consumes 440 grams for lunch. The other one, the average consumption per employee is between 820 to 835 grams. Now this would seem completely impossible, right? It's the same engineer, he's got the same qualification, he's working in the office, he's commuting the same distance, he's not doing any physical. We do factory also where the consumption is 1.2 kilograms per person. So what makes the difference is the business model. Now in one case, because it is fully paid by the company, what happens is you know that you can take as much as you need, you only take what you can consume. When you're paying for what you're taking, you also take what you can't consume because you feel that's better value for what you've paid. And therefore the business is so complex that you actually are cooking food, but your margin is in the waste. So you really don't know what should you be managing. Do I manage food fatigue? Do I manage the recipes through the ERPs that we have? Or do I track consumption and manage waste? Because that's where the best bang for your buck is. So these are some of the challenges that you face in the food services business, and increasingly the role of IoT, the role of technology in managing waste is going to be critical in driving profitability. And that's why you will see some of the global trends that are emerging will come to India, which, linking up to what you heard earlier about managing waste, will be relevant here. Though, of course, the regulatory environment is such that no food service provider would take accountability for disposal of food waste. So you don't want it to go to somebody else's hand and be accused of contamination later, because there isn't a governance around that yet. But the fact is that gradually these things will start coming. Gradually youwill see the industry itself attracting better quality of talent because that's the single biggest challenge we have today. Even though the government is spending so much of money on skill development, I mean, it's unimaginable the amount the government spends on skill development, yet the only pain you have in this business is about people. I mean, my business has 62% attrition at the lowest levels. It's near 1% the moment you're talking about the top 300. So you can see the dichotomy that you have to build a career plan for a guy at the, who's a multi-purpose worker or on the shop floor to be able to believe that he can have a career going forward. So I can see that, we are in the midst of very exciting times. It couldn't have been better because with technology, with tools to track behaviors, and with supply chain efficiencies kicking in, you will see a lot of new talent. You will also see people from other businesses, including myself, who will move in here because it's a great place to be. And personally, that's what excites me the most, that if you really want to test your ability to think out of the box, there couldn't be a better place than this. So for those of you who are thinking of wanting to set up something like this, please do so. Maybe one day Elior would be good enough to do an acquisition with you. We are always in the market for that. And you could do it from various different angles. So that's some of the insights which I, in my few years with this business, have kind of picked up. But maybe again, I'll give it to Sameer to give some more about how he sees some of these elements of the business playing out going forward.
I believe more and more technology is going to take over. It means automation in bulk cooking and foods, and we're going to get more and more pre-packaged stuff which we're going to be doing. So maybe we won't be making gravies any longer, and gravies will come pre-packed. This would help actually in purchase. Today we are bound by purchasing on the day we have to buy it. Whatever cost the vegetable is, we have to buy it. Doing it mass will save costs, and the preservation techniques today are available where there's all natural elements and there's no additives and everything. And going forward, this is going to be the trend. It'll really cost costs, and labor is going to get more and more expensive. And like trained labor is anyway at a premium today, and finding it is going to get more and more difficult. It takes just one person who's not trained to cause you so much damage. You're as good as the steward who's serving somebody, or you're as good as the chef who's cooked the food on that day. And if he doesn't know or he makes a mistake, you have to pay a huge cost for it. This is going to happen, and that's why automation is going to come. In the US, internationally, it's already started. 3D food printing, automatic machines, robots cooking food. I think that is going to be the way forward. You're going to have less and less human intervention going forward.
So just to summarize, I think importance of source of produce, source of ingredients. I think celebrating local, I think that's also something that I had forgotten to mention. Really important to, I think it's something that people are more aware of, is knowing who your suppliers are, where your produce is coming from, celebrating what you get here instead of the air miles that you're spending in terms of importing so many different types of ingredients. As I said before, technology, not only in terms of different types of equipment and how cooking methods are changing, but also actually the practical form of recipes and how you're presenting food, so that the technology involved in that. And I'd say in terms of the service and the experience perspective, the changing and constantly the innovation that you need to put into, the detail that you need to put into to make sure that it's no longer just a buffet catering meal anymore, but it's far, far more than that, whether it's, different stations, whether it's, cuisines from around the world, whether it's, chefs flying down, whether it's interactions of the chefs, whether it's the way that you present, the knowledge of the service staff. I think all of that it's coming now, but we have to sort of take it to a much, much larger level. And I just see time's up, so that's a good time to wrap up.
So yeah, thank you very much. I'll just quickly sum up a bit of what we talked about so far, which is that three major trends. One around supply chain efficiencies, which Ambika mentioned too, in terms of sourcing the right ingredients. Second, about building the right experience in terms of the kitchen. What should the experience be? Accountability, transparency, people able to cook and see what's happening in the kitchen. What Sameer talked about in terms of standards upgrade, ensuring discipline in the kitchen, and last but not the least, the role of technology, and how do we source the right manpower. So this is how we believe some of the key trends in this catering or the food services space are going to emerge. These are some of the variables which will impact it. If there are any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to answer. We'll try to appear intelligent in answering them. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm Shruti from Hospitality Lexus. I just want to ask one question, that on such a large platform, how you maintain hygiene?
Anyone particular you want?
Sorry?
Do you want any one of us to answer or all of us to answer?
All of us.
Okay, good. Thanks. So the first thing about any organization, and we heard about this yesterday, is about culture. You're never going to be able to ensure there is hygiene if you haven't built that culture right from the office where you sit to the kitchen where you cook. And the big challenge in building that culture is the high attrition rates. Because as you train, you lose people also. Two things enable it. One is the commitment from the customer to ensure that you maintain standards of hygiene which are in line with the certifications that you have. And the second is your own personal commitment as an organization to make it a way of life, no matter what the attrition is and what the challenges in its execution are. And that's the reason we actually quite like it when our customers say that we reserve the right to audit your kitchen or premises without notice to you at any time of the day that we feel. And our kitchen works 24 hours. So I think, yeah, these are the two ways in my mind, but maybe Sameer with more experience can tell you more, and Ambika.
Hygiene is your... No.
I think what Sanjay had said as well is that it starts from the people that work for you, and it has to be ingrained in terms of every aspect of the training that you put them through as far as hygiene is concerned. I think the really, really, really stringent SOPs, aside from the compliances and the licenses that you have to get just to operate, yourself, you need to have your own SOPs in place. Internal audits, but also external audits. So I just touching upon the fact that at any time, anyone can drop in to see whether it's a client, whether it's an external body, you can drop in to see, what your hygiene standards are. You need to be ready for that. So it's not a question of, 1 week we'll do this, 1 week we'll do this. It has to be a constant monitoring process and internal audits yourself. I think it's really, really important that you have an SOP in place where the company itself is internally auditing every step of way as far as hygiene from anything, whether it's your employee hygiene, to the hygiene of your goods coming into the kitchen, to the hygiene of how the actual cooking is happening, to how it's transported. And that's, supply chain is a really, really big thing over here, to make sure that your vans are refrigerated, to make sure that, the chicken was cooked at a certain temperature, it's brought down to a certain temperature, it's transported to a certain temperature, it's reheated to a certain temperature. So all that needs to be monitored and logged in, so you always have a record of it.
Does that answer your question, hopefully? Yeah, thanks.
Great presentation so far, so thank you very much. Thanks. My name is Roberto De Angelis, and my question is, like restaurants, but with much higher exposure, you are the middleman in charge of a product to deliver a product to the ultimate customers, but this is a product that you really don't control, and it comes from several kinds of supply chains, fields, and whatnot. So even with all the systems in place and safe health and sanitations, what are you doing directly to work with certain purveyors to ensure that the industry or the distance between the fields and your kitchens becomes safer? Okay,
thank you. Thank you very much for that question. So I'll answer it in two parts. One part which is about the accountability that we take, and the other part is the improvements that we need in the ecosystem. Okay. So the accountability that we take largely comes from what you said, which is also driven by the customers who can, who we serve. But that's one part of it. How is it driven by them? Most customers who value food at the workplace and see it as a part of the employee value proposition actually specify the number of incidents of foreign bodies that you can have in the food in the duration of a 12-month contract. So that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on us to have to invest from sortex machines to manual resorting to ensure that foreign bodies don't come. But that's just one part of the answer. The second part links to the supply chain. Now, one of the challenges we faced in this country was the supply chain is highly inefficient. And that was also driven by the tax structure which we had, which didn't provide for aggregation. Unfortunately, on 27th July, we just got back to where we were. So, you're going to see some pullback from where it was headed. But typically, globally, the supply chain works through logistic companies. Now, in India, it's not moved there. In India, most food service producers, be it restaurants or caterers, are actually buying from traders or directly from the farms in certain cases, which is good and bad. It is good when the price point is such that you can go to a namdhari and pick the vegetables. But you're also in the business to make money. So every customer is not going to lend itself to vegetables procured from namdhari. Where you're buying from a trader, that's where your biggest challenge comes. For example, today, typically when you buy a bunch of coriander, you have between 8 to 9% waste because of the stem and mud. Now, should you be buying from namdhari, you'll pay 18% more, but net you're paying 8% more and you're knocking off sorting manpower in your kitchen. So the way I see, to your question, is that you will need gains to happen on both sides. As the industry grows and there is scale, supply chain efficiencies will kick in, which will ensure better control on produce that is delivered to you to cook, and customers becoming more rigid and ensuring that you take accountability for the food that you deliver to employees, because it's a very important part of the employee value proposition. So these two hopefully will drive the curve to at least benchmarking Indian food safety standards to regional standards, because the belief we most Indians have in the certification agencies is very low. And that's the reason that, this question comes up, that, we do know that these certificates exist, but we need something more to believe in it. Maybe Ambika can, does that kind of answer your question? Thanks.
I mean, we're on a much smaller scale, but to start off with, it is a big challenge as far as your question, what you've posed, and as far as our company is concerned, it's a very personal thing. I know every single supplier I work with. We know the source of their produce as much as we can. A lot of it, like I said, we grow ourselves in terms of raw produce, but also a whole bunch of other stuff that we need to use. Every 6 months we meet them, we go through quality checks, we understand where the source of the produce is, we do a lot of taste tests. So like for me it's a very different situation, but it's a much more personal level that I have in terms of auditing it with our supply chain. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Any more questions?
They can, as we are running a bit behind schedule, I request you to please connect with them offline. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Hope you had a fruitful interaction with our panelists. Thank you so much. I'm sure all of us have immensely benefited with what you shared. Please stay back for a while. I request our session moderator to